Last week I tore down an engine that I didn't really care for, a 1-liter EcoBoost. So for this week, I picked an engine that I wanted to do, something that I've been looking for some time, and I finally got one, a Hyundai or Kia Tau V8. It's a 4.6-liter port-injected, naturally aspirated engine that puts out 385 horsepower, which I've been trying to think of a V8 engine without direct injection under 5 liters that makes this kind of power. I can't think of one. I mean, sure, there's lots of 5 liters and larger that make more, but for a 4.6 liter, this has the Toyota beat. This has everybody beat. BMW, that's the closest thing. So this is a pretty impressive engine on paper, especially considering this came out in 2008 or 2009. Now these were offered in the Hyundai Genesis Sedan and the Kia Borrego, which is essentially an SUV that exists. Not my favorite, but I do like the Genesis. I've driven those cars. These are pretty easy engines to work on, although I've never torn one all the way down. So I'm really curious to see what happened to this engine and what the failure mode was. These engines are not terribly expensive on the used market, about $1,200 to $1,500, which tells me there's either a low demand or perhaps not as many people are fixing them. Either way, I got a core here that supposedly doesn't turn all the way. Now, when I got this core in, I didn't really get any details with it, but one of the things I really like about Hyundai and Kia engines is they almost always have a VIN number on them. So I did a little sleuth work, and I figured out this is from a 2011 Genesis sedan that was rear-ended with 150,000 miles on it. So it's from a wrecked car, and if I got that in here, I would assume it's good, although we run everything that comes in. So let's see if we can verify the complaint. Okay. Okay, it does turn. Ooh, it makes some bad noises. Also seems to be lacking compression, and I haven't pulled the plugs yet. Uh-oh. Nope. Okay, we hit a stuck point. So there's definitely something wrong with this engine. Let's tear it down and find out what that is. Well, it looks like the first thing I need to do before I can get this coil out is remove the dipstick tube. Already? So soon? I'm not prepared for this. No way. Well, now that we've got that out of the way, we can pull the coils. Uh-oh. There's no plug there. Well, we have 7 out of 8 spark plugs. Unfortunately, I do not have a complete set of plugs to show you, but what is here looks like it was running a little lean, or maybe it was overheated. They're not all the same or not all as bad as the other, but nothing is bent, nothing's missing, nothing's wet. So I don't see any signs of malice in the combustion palace today. Next, we're going to remove the intake manifold. I don't know how many other things I need to take off for this. It's like a crankcase vent hose here. Apparently there's something else. Oh, I see. There's a couple coolant hoses here. This seems like the right tool for this job. You know what? We're just going to pull the intake up and hope for the best. And I think some nuts went down the intake ports. It's fine. This engine's not going back together. Blue for everything. Well, the top of the valves are pretty rusty. There's quite a bit of debris in there. Why would that be? I don't see anything horrible. Lots of debris. but I don't see any metal bits. I don't see any messed up valves. Oh, we're out of ports there. And the valley has a lot of oxidation. I mean, look at this. That's like aluminum powder. Maybe that's leaking coolant. Maybe this valley pan gasket was leaking. Hard to say. Now, let's tear off the right side valve cover. Uh-oh. Well, that one's busted. Yes. Rust. Well, this doesn't look good. Lots of rust on the cam lobes. There's obviously been a lot of moisture in here. I think this valve cover had some damage to it, and maybe this engine was stored outside. Although that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And there's some damage there to that cam lobe. We'll have to take a close look at that follower. Yeah, that's probably one of the rustiest engines we've seen, at least for the cams, in a while. On the bright side, the timing chain looks to be intact. The guide looks intact. Well, that's a first. And someone's been in there because it had a broken off valve cover bolt. Now it's time for the left valve cover. That one's broken off too. Oh man. Much of the same on this side. It might be a little bit better than the other side, but it's still bad. It's still something you don't want to see in the crankcase. Next, I'm going to remove the water outlet, and I guess this is a thermostat housing. Well, that all looks pretty simple. I'm actually just going to lay this into the valley for now. I just wanted it out of the way. Next, we'll remove the upper timing cover. Well, quite a bit of oil deposits in there. Oh yeah, well, there's quite a bit of sludge down here in the pocket, and I can see why it would accumulate there. Lots of varnish and signs of moisture on that rail. Not looking good so far, but I don't see anything broken. Similar story on this side. Nothing looks awry, but definitely some moisture in here. Now we'll remove the water pump pulley. That looks nice. Before I can remove the water pump, I need to remove this belt tensioner. And now, the water pump. Did I miss a bolt? How does that work? Should I take that out? Yeah, we're going to take that out. I don't know if that's going to be the last one I need to take out, but we're going to start there. Let's just give it a little tap. Well, that side's loose. This side is very much not. Would you just... What am I to do? There's a dowel somewhere keeping this thing together. Maybe. Yes. Water pump. Well, I didn't need to take that out, but it's out. It looks like it's got quite a bit of corrosion on it. It looks like it's been leaking past this gasket, though. Definitely does in this area. Now, aside from the gasket, the pump does look pretty decent. The next thing I'd like to do is remove the oil filter. We'll take a look at that. Water is coming out. Nope, that's oil. Pretty goopy looking oil. I'm going to let this kind of drain for a minute. Next, I'm going to remove the crank pulley. Ooh, that's tight. Come on now. It's laughing at me. Probably because I put so much weight on it, turning it over. All right, let's get the big one. Let's try this one.
Yeah.
Oh, it comes right off. And it's keyed.
My favorite.
Next, I'm going to go crazy and remove a whole bunch of 12mm headed bolts. Next, the oil filter and cooler housing. No! I needed that. Well, the coolant is where the coolant's supposed to be, so that's good. It's always a plus. Now I've got 4 bolts, 2 on each side to hold the head to the timing cover. I'm actually going to remove these. It's going to make things a little bit easier. These are VVT solenoids. Oopsies. Dropped one. Well, that one came right out. Why won't this one? Well, the one I need to come out is in the way. How about this side? Okay. Well, I don't see a bunch of metal buildup on these, which is good. There we are. Kind of sludgy, but no chunks. Now it looks like there's one more 12mm here in the valley that needs to get out of the way. I don't see any more, just that one. All right, guys, what do we think? Is that it? Did I get it all? There is a coolant pipe, crossover pipe. It goes through the valley. I don't know how much attention I'm going to need to give that. But we're going to start kind of poking around at it. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't do anything. I don't know. Oh, here's a place. I'm pretty sure I got all the bolts out of it, right? Yeah. Yep. I don't think you're supposed to... I don't think you need to pull the heads first. I could be wrong. No, it definitely got a gap opened up on this side, but that's not going to be enough. Really isn't a good place to pry over here. I can't imagine that needs to come out. You know what I am going to do? I'm going to remove the bolts that hold the crossover pipes in, just in case that's given some resistance. I think that's it. And I know I could pull the heads off first and then get this off a lot easier, but I want to verify timing. That's what I'd really like to do. Okay, we got a gap opening up here. I'm not trying to swing this too crazy. Just trying to get it to break the bond. Well, it's definitely coming. It's just taking its sweet time. Don't really want to pry on the mating surface. It's usually a bad call. Oh, I see what's holding me up. There's more bolts. It's not a huge deal. Here we go. Timing cover. Looks like it's in good shape. That's a bolt I dropped. Ignore that. Well, the timing system all looks to be in pretty good shape. I don't see any broken guides. Nothing's missing. I don't see signs of metal anywhere. It's just pretty varnished. It's not terrible. Well, let's have a look-see. there's definitely a lot of debris in there, but it's not like metal. The filter's literally just breaking apart. I see a couple metal fragments just buried in the corners here. It's not terrible though. It's not like it's loaded, like I think something came apart inside this engine. Just a lot of dirt. Okay, now I'm going to try to turn this engine over to where I think the timing marks should be. If I can get it there. I can't get it there. Well, I don't really want to turn it over backwards, but we will. Nope. That's not going to happen. So I can't really verify timing. I don't really want to get this bolt stuck on here again. And without a balancer here, I don't want to mess up the end of the crank. So I can't verify timing. Shucks. Now it's time to strip the timing system. We're going to start with the cam gears. Then we'll get the tensioners out. Okay. Didn't expect that. Tensioner looks a little worn, but definitely usable. Same deal with this one. Everything looks good. Now we're going to zip these rails out. That one looks like it's in really good shape. Not a ton of wear. Same deal here. Yeah, it looks nice. These don't want to come off as easy because they're on these pins. I bet that those heads need to come off for that. But we do need to take these bridge guides out, and we'll do that next. Actually, can I get these off? Oh yeah. Well, that was really easy. Okay, let's pull these chains out. Oh, I see. The chains are held captive. I'll rescue those later. First, let's start working on these cams. We are going to start with the left side cylinder head. Well, the journals don't look too bad. I don't see a bunch of metal debris. There's not a lot of scoring. Now, all these roller rockers or followers, they all seem to be in all right condition. I don't feel anything that's too terrible, but the rollers up here are pretty rusty. It's definitely had a bunch of moisture in the crankcase. Now, the cam caps have a little bit more wear. Typically, that's where you'll find the wear, just because of the tension of the valve springs on the camshafts. But they're not as bad as we've seen. I think a lot of this would clean up. I think they're definitely still usable. The cams, however, the rust pretty much ruins these camshafts. These are going to go in the scrap bin. You know, without the moisture, these would be a serviceable pair of cams. Now it's time to crack the head bolts loose. Whoa there. Okay, I have no idea if this is just going to pop right off or if it's going to be a fight. Oh, it's full of fluid. Okay, all right, okay. We can kind of solve this and create some new problems at the same time. It's fine. I just hope that pan doesn't flip over. It's gonna flip over. Would you just... I need to do something different for this stand. Oh my God, it's so much coolant. It's like 80% in the pan. No. No way. Let's pull the head gasket. That looks good. I'm going to rotate this engine over just a little to get some of this fluid out. I'm holding on to the pan. This is making a monumental mess, by the way. Yeah, is that it? You done? Well, I don't like seeing that. That is carbon. And if that builds up, it can create a whole bunch of resistance because there's not really any room between the top of the piston and the cylinder head. So if you put something there, it keeps it from turning over. And it looks like it has been compressed. Boy, if that was why this engine's bad, that would be a real shame. It wouldn't be the first time we saw it, though. There's a little bit of moisture in these cylinders. I know it's hard to see. But it could have been how it's stored. The cross-hatching looks beautiful. We still have to do our test. Ooh, that didn't sound good. Oh, that's the piston rocking. At the top of the bore is kind of unusual. Bottom of the bore, more common. Okay, I think we're okay there. And I think it's time to go look at the cylinder head. The head really doesn't show any signs of damage, but in the two cylinders that had the most amount of carbon buildup, there are clean spots as if the piston tried to compress something and it cleaned that part of the cylinder head of the combustion chamber. I don't see any bent valves. This head looks pretty good. All right, now to the other side. Well, the cylinder head doesn't look too bad, although that journal looks like it was run pretty dry. Maybe that's just from turning the engine over with water in that journal. All of these rockers, super rusty. This side is far worse than the other. They all spin pretty well. I don't really see anything besides the moisture. And the camshafts are they're just done. I mean, look at the amount of corrosion. That's a journal. It was. Lots of rust. What a waste. And the caps show signs that it was turned over with no lubrication. It could have been me. Now, let's crack these head bolts loose. All right, you gonna make another big mess? Probably. Oh, not so bad. Man, that is not what I want to find. Head gasket looks good. That's not good. Well, while we're here, we're going to do our test. Rocks at the top of the bore. That's okay. It's not terrible. It's really not bad. Just like the other side. A lot of carbon. Look at that. That will certainly make a tight spot in one of these engines and make it hard to turn over. Or even make it to where you can't turn it over. Cross-hatching looks nice. I don't see a ton of damage. Not a lot of vertical scratches, but everything's still in place. Let's go look at that cylinder head. Same story over here. I don't see anything wrong. I don't see any bent valves. But there's a clean spot. And look at all the carbon right there. You guys got to floor your cars. Just wide open throttle, get on the highway every now and then. Now we can get these rails with the chains off. Oh, what the? There's one rail. It's a little rusty, but it looks good. Pretty nice looking chain. Seems to be original. And the final rail. Really? Not bad. These chains though. Alright guys, it's time to turn the short block over. If this turns over smooth, which I'm anticipating it turning over, this was a fail. Like baby's bottom. Everything goes to the top of the bore. I don't see anything wrong here. Carbon. Man, it's not the first time we've seen that. Now maybe I could sell this as a short block, but there's a couple unknowns here, and plus, we don't leave things half torn down. That's not what we do here. There could be more damage in here because if there's that much resistance to turning the engine over with this chunk of carbon in multiple cylinders, it could have damaged a rod bearing. And if I sold this as a good short block and had a damaged rod bearing, well, it would be a return and it would waste a ton of someone's time. So we're not going to do that. We're going to tear it all the way down. We'll see what survived, if there's any more damage. Maybe there's none. Maybe I get a bunch of good parts to sell. Let's turn this thing over, see if it makes us more of a mess. I'm sure it won't. It wouldn't do that. We got oil. That'll work. Now it's time to pull the lower oil pan. All right, we're just going to give it a little tap. I thought for sure that thing would go flying. Let's try it again. Just a little nudge. Let's get something with a little more oomph. Don't know if this will do it. There we go. Yeah. It's beautiful in there. And by beautiful, I mean it's kind of a piece of artwork. Well, it's got a little bit of a Milky Way appearance because there's a lot of moisture in the remaining oil in this engine. I think this thing was stored outside, and that is probably what wrecked it. Now we can pull the upper oil pan. Hopefully this just pops right off. Oh, actually, look. There's a threaded boss in the pan on this side. And I guess that's to thread a bolt in here So it can split this off of the bed plate. Let's try that. Wow. That's awesome. That makes life so much easier. And the upper pan is off. Lots of peanut buttery looking oil. It's not really what you want to see, but we're seeing it. Now it's time to remove the chain on the oil pump. And I do want to take this oil pump apart, which means I should probably get this loose. Thankfully, this has a keyed crankshaft, and we should be able to get this off. It's just that simple. I don't see any debris in the pickup. There's no chunks of anything, so now we can remove this oil pump assembly. There we go. All right, we don't really need to take this apart because I don't think we're going to find any damage, but we're going to take it apart. Pretty standard looking. Pretty neat housing. It's pretty elaborate. Nice and wide. I don't see any damage. There's really nothing notable. Very simple design. Now this engine has a bed plate instead of main caps. So we're going to remove that before we get to any of the rod caps or any of that stuff. We'll remove that, we'll get the rods and pistons out, and then we'll pop that crank out of here. Okay. Well, I guess we'll just crack these loose first. Let's see how tight these are. I wonder why my impact won't do that. Okay, I don't see any threaded holes on this one to pop this loose easily. So let's get blue and see if we can get this separated. I think that's how you're supposed to do it right there. Works out really well, even if you're not. Well, this all looks pretty good in here. I didn't really suspect we'd find any oiling problems in this once we saw the carbon on top of the pistons, but you never know. Okay, we're going to start with number 1 and work our way back. Okay, now this crankshaft should just lift right out. Starting off with the rod bearings, they do have some dried brake clean on them, so they look a little strange, but they are actually in really good shape. There's no scratches, no grooves. We didn't really anticipate any oiling issues The oil filter didn't have a bunch of metal in it. This all looks really good, especially for 150,000 miles. The rods and pistons look pretty good. All the rings are free. Nothing is stuck in the ringland. A little bit of skirt wear on the thrust side. Some of these have a lot of carbon on the crown and on the top of the piston. It's a little concerning, but I have my theories here. Yeah, that's one of the ones that stamped a piece of carbon into the cylinder head. There's another one right there. But I didn't see any damage to the rod bearings, so that was good. I guess carbon is softer than a rod bearing. And as you would expect, the crankshaft looks great. This is definitely a serviceable part. I wouldn't have any issues using this in another engine. And the lower shells for the main bearings also look pretty good. Again, we didn't really think they wouldn't. The upper shells also look nice. It's hard to tell this has 150,000 miles on it. And I know that may not sound like a lot, but keep in mind what we just tore down last week and what everything looked like. Now let's look at the bores. Outside of the very top ridge where there's a little bit of rust and carbon, these look really nice. Not a ton of wear. No real damage to mention. Same thing on the other bank. This all looks good. Yeah, these bores are pretty nice. The last thing that I want to do on this channel is tear down a good engine. And that's not what happened here. I tore down a bad engine, but the failure mode, it all could have been avoided. First off, if you have a car, any car, I don't care what it is, every now and then when you're getting on the highway, floor it, would you? Just wide open throttle, let it run through a couple gears. You're not going to hurt anything. In fact, if you don't do that, this is what happens. All this extra carbon buildup. Now, some of that could have been from some bad crankcase ventilation parts, or maybe they ran the wrong fuel type. I think these engines require premium octane, and they could have run the cheap stuff. It doesn't matter. This could have been cleaned up, and it would have been fine, and then it sat outside and got water in it, and I know the rust might wipe off, but it's not really worth putting cams in, retiming the engine. It's not an expensive engine, but it still would have been worth selling prior to the water intrusion to the crankcase. This was still a really neat engine. I didn't see anything too terrible about its design. I don't really design engines. I just take them apart when they break. If you'd like to buy any parts off of this engine or anything else I've torn down, or off of this supercharged Range Rover Sport, I'm going to leave our email in the video description. You can also go to importapart.com. I've been uploading our parts cars just about every single week. You can check out our new inventory. If you don't see what you're looking for, you can fill out our part request form as well. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown as always. I love all the comments, all the feedback, even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.